The Kraken did it again. They snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken fall in overtime for the 13th time this season, overtime or the shootout, their 13th loser point of the season, to the Arizona Coyotes, who have been terrible since the All-Star break, but at least there is the silver lining that now with the season basically on its last legs, they're not going to the playoffs. This at least means the Kraken get a little bit better standing for the draft lottery at the end of the year. But at the same time, it doesn't really make the fact that the Kraken keep finding ways to lose games, now their 7th loss in a row, any less frustrating or disappointing. It just, I don't know, makes it a little bit more bearable, I guess, or gives you something to be optimistic about. If they are able to lose enough games even against bad teams like this one, then they have a decent chance at getting a top 10 pick. I suppose the other bright side is that we probably don't have to spend much time on this game, because honestly, with this game, it's basically just a copy paste from that home game against Vegas, where the Kraken play decently throughout the game, get that late lead, and then blow it with just over a minute left in the game, and then lose it in overtime. Only this time, there isn't the fun, interesting, high-scoring game that leads up to it. It's just a horribly boring game right up until the last parts of the third period. So you don't have the 5-6 score, instead you have a 1-2 score, and it's also not against a good team like Vegas, it's against a struggling team in Arizona. So it's like that game against Vegas, only worse in every other possible way. Of course, on the other hand, I could easily go off on this team, lean into the frustration, get angry, rant about how this team cannot score goals. Even against a team like the Coyotes, they still managed to score only 1 goal, and sure, it's the second half of a back-to-back, but this team shows no heart and they've basically given up on the season. Again, that might be for the best as far as the long term is concerned, but it certainly is going to make these next 13 games, I think it is left, pretty frustrating to watch, especially with a lot of bad teams that they should be able to beat. If they continue to score 1 or 2 goals a game, it's going to be some tough watching. And that's not even to mention the fact that, well, again, the future does look bright, at least next season. While I still think this is a good enough team to make the playoffs, even if it didn't happen this year, there's no denying the fact that right now they are not playing that way whatsoever, and the team isn't likely to change a ton going into next year. Sure, Riker Evans will probably be with the team, and probably Shane Wright as well, and you don't know what they could do in free agency, but the same general group of players are going to be out on the ice next year and trying to score goals at more than a 1 or 2 goals per game rate, like they've done for good chunks of this season. But I suppose, at least for now anyway, that can be October's problem, or at the very least the off-season when we go over the review of this season and what went wrong for the Kraken. For now, we can just focus on this game, the second half of a back-to-back that was pretty disappointing on both halves. They actually played a better game, I think, in Vegas than they did in this one, which usually that would be the case, with the first half of a back-to-back being the easier game to play well, and then the second half, either way, it's pretty much the same group of skaters, with the lines being mixed up as we would have expected coming into this game, with the exception of Daccord in net for the Kraken, with it being in Arizona, with Grubauer obviously having started the game previous in Vegas. And as far as the game is concerned, it's not even like this was an entertaining, low-scoring game with great goaltending. I mean, it still was pretty good goaltending, especially Vejmelka was doing a good job of keeping the Kraken off the board, but we get to the third period with the score still 0-0, even in spite of the Kraken having gotten 3 power plays to that point, the first 2 of which they actually did a pretty good job of trying to score, and that was Vejmelka just keeping them off the board. Their third power play, they actually gave Arizona better chances to score, and they did kill off 1 Arizona power play, but again, not much else happened other than the Kraken having a slight edge in the general flow of play. It doesn't result in a goal though, so we go to the third, still scoreless, and stay scoreless until almost the 8-minute mark of the third period. At which point the Kraken finally look competent in the offensive end, as Riker Evans picks up a rebound off a Burakovsky shot, passes it down below the net to Schwartz, who gets it up to McCann, then McCann looks around for a second, passes it right back to Riker Evans on the far side, Riker fires the puck in, buries it into the back of the net, past a sprawling, diving Vejmelka, doing everything, including throwing his stick that he can to try and keep this out, but Riker Evans puts the Kraken on the board with just 12 minutes left in the game, picking up his first NHL goal. So an awesome moment for Evans as the rest of the guys on the ice pile around him. He obviously looks very excited. He's gotten close to scoring a few times, but this is his first goal in the NHL after quite a few games played, and 7 assists already, which from a defenseman you would expect more assists than goals. Either way, a great play here by Evans to get down into the play and then keep himself open on that far side and fire off the shot before Vejmelka has a chance to get back. And yeah, just a great moment. The only bummer is that it couldn't happen in Seattle to watch it live, but still you like to see it. Actually, you love to see it. And based on how this game has gone so far, there's a good chance that this could be the only goal in the game, as the Kraken look like they're going to pick up their first ever franchise 1-0 victory. But of course, as we well know, that was not in the cards for this night, or really the last couple weeks for the Kraken, as nothing seems to go their way, and a lot of that is self-imposed, including when a few minutes later, after a failed power play by the Coyotes, or actually just a good kill by the Kraken, they do, at 5-on-5, end up tying the game up. Arizona comes rushing into the Kraken end and just goes straight at the net. I don't know if this was a pass across Daccord's face or if he does end up making a save here. Either way, it goes right across his face through the paint in front of him, out to the far side where it goes off the skate of a player on that side and into the net behind Daccord, as he's pretty much taken out by the first guy, though he was pushed into Daccord, so there's no goaltender interference there. It doesn't count as goaltender interference, even if he does interfere if he was pushed into Daccord. So the goal goes in, and just like that, the Kraken give up a goal right after having scored one, or at least within a few minutes of it. Or wait, maybe not? There wasn't goaltender interference for all the reasons I just described, and the Kraken don't challenge this in spite of Hackstall talking to the officials for quite some time during the break between the goal happening and play resuming. So even without a Kraken challenge, it still goes to official review for a distinctive kicking motion that ends up scoring. Ah yes, the Kraken's old nemesis, the kicked-in goal. A rule that has plagued the Kraken since all the way back in their first game as a team against Vegas in that first season, where a kicked-in goal still stood after review. It ended up being the game-deciding goal, and since then it's come back to bite them once or twice a season. But at least this time, they do actually get the call correct. It is clearly a kicked-in puck, though I'll admit that there was no way to really tell what had happened at live action. It was just chaos around the net and the puck ends up in it. But when you slow it down, look at the replay, and get the right angle, it's pretty clear that as the puck is coming towards him, he picks up his skate and swings it towards the puck, especially swinging his heel out, but even lifting the toe off the ice, which turns this into a distinctive kicking motion. And sure enough, with that being what puts the puck in the net, it comes off the board, and the Kraken catch a huge break here as they maintain the 1-0 lead. And they maintain that 1-0 lead through the next few minutes of the game, right up until, with 1:10 left, the Coyotes do eventually get Vejmelka pulled, but he barely makes it to the bench as they come rushing down the ice. The sixth skater never really even plays a factor. As the puck is rushed on net, it's just kind of a chip shot as the guy's going past the goal line, but even in spite of it not being a terribly dangerous shot, Daccord isn't able to handle it cleanly. It goes off of him and goes out to the far side, where Keller, crashing the net on that side, is able to chip it into the top of the net to tie the game at 1 with 1:08 left. And as much as I hate to say it, this is really just one Daccord has to have. He has to be able to cleanly handle that puck, or at the very least, not allow a rebound or any kind of leaking of that puck out to the far side. If he can just keep it in front of him, if he's not even able to freeze it, then this is swept out into the corner by one of the defensemen following the play in, and there's no problem. The Kraken probably win this one, or at least have a chance at 6-on-5. Instead, with that bobble of the puck, it ends up in the net, and we head to overtime. Okay, so I took a second look at the replay, and I'm just going to take it all back. The puck doesn't actually jump out to the other side. It goes, I mean, Daccord still could have handled this better for sure. It's not a dangerous shot that he does allow to bounce out, but Keller has to be covered here. It goes right out in front of the net, and Keller's able to whack it in. It's a pretty high skill play still to be able to score from where he does. Daccord could have played it better, but this is just terrible defense from the Kraken, allowing Keller to crash in there all alone. And in overtime, which has been a problem for the Kraken all season long, as the 13 shootout or overtime loss points would suggest, although both teams get their chances with the puck, it's a possession battle as we've come used to with 3-on-3 overtime. Both teams do get shots off on net. The Kraken actually get a couple chances, but none of it's particularly dangerous until we get to about 2 minutes left in overtime. Beniers has a great play, weaving through all 3 of the Coyotes skaters and then beating Vejmelka, but just can't quite get the last little hook on the puck to get it into the net past Vejmelka, as it ends up sliding behind him through the crease and out to the far side. And then bing, bang, boom, back the other way. It's a breakaway for the Coyotes, and they end up scoring on it to win this game in overtime 2-1. So once again with this game, like I said in the beginning, it's basically a copy of that game against Vegas, but worse in every entertainment way and also against a worse opponent. Sure, it's on the second half of a back-to-back, but at this point, it's really not worth coming up with more excuses for this team. They're just not playing anywhere near their capability, especially offensively, which really has been the big problem this season. I mean, sure, you can point to defensive breakdowns that lead to those chances on net late in the game, that one of them is taken off the board, but 2 that end up in the net for the Coyotes. Even at that, though, if you're just able to score at a decent rate and play well in the offensive end, that one or two defensive mistakes never ends up costing you, and you can win these games in regulation. I mean, it's what got the Kraken so far last season, as they scored nearly a goal per game more last season than they have this year. And again, at the end of the season, when we do the recap of the season, we can talk maybe a little bit more about specific reasons for that incredible decline in scoring. But obviously, it's just not there for the Kraken, and they need to figure something out. I don't know, just try whatever you can here at the end of the season, find something that might be able to work when you get things going next year so you can get off to a better start and hopefully not be put in a position where you need to win games at the end of the season to get in a playoff race where instead they lost 7 straight and they're completely out of it. Of course, though, again, there is the silver lining that with the loss and the Kraken out of the playoffs, it does get them at least a little bit closer to a better spot in the draft lottery and at least an outside chance at getting one of the first 2 picks. They're likely to be, if they're in the top 10, somewhere between 6th and 10th, so their chances of the first or second pick are not great, though obviously even if you don't win the lottery, the higher you can be in the draft, the better to get a better pick or at least a better chance at whatever player the Kraken have graded highest at that point in the draft. Either way, it brings in now teams from the East as far as where the Kraken stand at this point in time. They're currently 8th in the pecking order, though obviously there's some differences with games in hand. Now, realistically, 8th is probably the best the Kraken can do as far as where they go into the draft lottery. They're currently 6 points still ahead of the Coyotes after this loss, and that puts them right down at the bottom of a pack of teams that includes a couple from the East in Pittsburgh and Buffalo, so that loss to Buffalo all of a sudden becomes a pretty handy one for the Kraken, as well as Calgary's right there, New Jersey, the New York Islanders, and then you start to get into a range of teams that Kraken are unlikely to catch. So anywhere between 8th and 12th is likely where the Kraken will land, and the more losing they can do, while it will be frustrating because a lot of their remaining opponents are pretty bad teams, the better of a chance it'll give them at being in that top 10. Anyway, with that being said, we can probably just close out this one and move on to, at least for the sake of entertainment, hopefully a win and a breakup of this losing streak in one of the next 3 games. They've got a struggling Habs team and then a very struggling Ducks team in the next 3 games. They have 2 games against the Ducks back-to-back at home coming up, so one of those you would think has to be a win. But anyway, let's just get to the Kraken 3 stars. As always, brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to help decide these Kraken 3 stars, or if there are stars, then you can help support the channel a little bit more than you already are by watching to this point. If you made it to this point, thank you very much for doing that. But you can also support a little more by going to the link down below to Patreon and supporting over there. As far as the 3 stars, I mean, this is probably a game where I could pick none, but there's 3 guys that I do think played pretty well. The first star, I think, clearly is Riker Evans. He plays a fantastic game after one of his worst in the NHL in the game previous against the Golden Knights. He comes out and has a great game here in Arizona and obviously gets his first NHL goal, which is a highlight all of its own. And then the second star, Ty Cartier, had a great game. He really did everything he possibly could to score a goal other than actually find a way to beat Vejmelka. He had a number of pretty good chances, but remained snakebit as he just could not get one to go. And then the third star, even in spite of that late goal that ends up sending the game to overtime that I would say was mostly his fault, maybe not all, but Joey Daccord had a great game up to that point, and even if that is not a great goal to allow, he really should have never been put in a place where that was the difference-making goal between winning the game and overtime. The Kraken should have more than had a 1-goal lead at that point in the game. Unfortunately, the 1 goal did make the difference, but still Daccord had a great game and came that close to getting a shutout back where he went to college and played his college hockey in the building that he helped build, which again would have been a pretty cool moment, but that would have been too nice for this season for the Kraken. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you made it to this point, again, thank you very much for doing so. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken, no matter how... yeah.